All right. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today is tables in InDesign. Um, and I think I showed an example of the use of tables, and it's really, it's actually more common than you would think. And it's kind of a discipline to set up a table because it takes a little bit of time to do that. And we tend to kind of want to just coddle it together and just say, okay, let's just do individual text box or strokes and fills and that kind of stuff. But it ends up really being a burden when there's a lot of changes that have to be made. So it's, one of those things. It takes you a little bit of time to set it up in the beginning, but then once you do, you're thankful that you did, especially when all the changes and revisions come in. So let me share my screen and go to these things that I want to talk about. And I'm going to use this dessert page example in InDesign as the example of a table, and I'm going to have you all build this as an assignment after I'm done. Tables are to give you typographic solutions when you have a lot of complex information that needs to be organized, rows and columns that, for comparison things. You see that a lot in product comparisons, that kind of thing. Features of different models of items, like a car, for instance. The LX has this, but the DX has this, and big giant table with all kind of little dots that are put in what features have what. This is also going to talk about using text wraps, which probably already know how to do, but that's going to be incorporated in this assignment. Also, grids within grids. And advanced typography really is understanding the typographic challenges that you're going to have in a project, and to pre-plan those challenges in a way where things are going to be organized and things are going to look good. I mean, it's going to, the more typographic order that you have in a piece, the better it communicates and the better it looks aesthetically. And then we'll go over the text frame options panel, which is actually different than the tables panel. And it's a little simpler way of creating columns within a text box. And we could have text boxes within text boxes. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's get right to it. And I'm going to go to InDesign. And I'm going to show you this page here of a table that was, let me just kind of set this up. This was actually a fictitious assignment that I created, so it wasn't real. But let's say we have a food magazine, which there are many out there. And let's say that one of the pages the client wants to highlight desserts and recipes, let's say. Well, maybe not necessarily recipes, but maybe dessert ideas for certain events or whatever. And it's one page. We only get one page to put in all of this information that they want published in this magazine. So they want a header that says dessert, maybe a small block of copy that talks about what the article is about, and then the main ingredient of the 5 desserts that they want to show, and descriptions of that, and when they could be used for certain types of parties or whatever. And then kind of the running article that goes in the middle here underneath that, which incorporates a text wrap, a drop cap to start the article, 3 columns, and then under that what we usually refer to in editorial as a sidebar. And a sidebar usually is typically kind of on the side, and it's a separate colored box, let's say. And what a sidebar does is it differentiates information from the main article. So when you see the sidebar, you know that it's talking about something other than the main article. Kind of a, a pull out article, if you will, article within an article. And then at the very end is a picture of a dessert cookbook with a little caption that talks about that. So those are the elements that are on the page. And these are what it's going to incorporate are using columns, using text boxes with columns, and using a table. So we're going to concentrate on the table first. And again, the whole idea of a table is for you to put information in where it can be changed quickly and it's flexible. So for instance, let me just jump to this right now. And let's say after we design this, the client comes back and says, oh, can we squeeze in another dessert? And again, if we did this, just a traditional way of just boxes of photos and columns of text next to each other where each one of these is an individual element, it would be very difficult to squeeze another one in. With the table, we can simply go from this to this. Now this is 6 items. We squeezed one in, these eclairs here at the end, or these pastries. And whereas we had this before, now we have this, and this was revised in a matter of minutes, literally, to do this. So this is where the flexibility of a table comes in. Now another thing is that if we wanted to take out one of these and only have 4 across in a table and spread out the copy, we could easily do that too. Okay, so let's start in building the table. So I'm going to go to a blank page here. And we'll start with how to build a table. The first thing is that to understand is that a table is text. It starts with a text box. So it's not a rectangle, it's not a shape, it's a text box. So we get on the text tool. And I did one as an example and I put it off to the side, so I just turned on my guides right now just so I can see my margins. And I'm going to just start with the text box and I'm going to draw a text box. Okay. Now how deep or wide you draw, you can always adjust that, but I'll just start from here. And this is an ordinary text box. We could start typing text in it and whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to insert a table in this text box. And the way we do that is we go up to Table at the top. And InDesign has a dedicated menu for tables and lots of things that we could do with a table. So tables are a big part of InDesign where they've dedicated a whole column to this. And so we're going to insert a table. There's a shortcut key here that's like 3 shortcut keys, but we'll just do it this way, insert table. And when we do that, the dialog box that comes out is one that asks us how many rows and how many columns do we want. Now there are header rows and there are footer rows, and rather than get into this becomes a little bit more complicated. Like let's say you have a header of a title and you want that to be separate from the actual table itself. You can establish a header row or a footer row. Let's say the footer row is a disclaimer that has an asterisk with all these disclaimer, points. And you want that to be separate from the normal table, you can create a footer row. But for now, we'll leave those blank, and I'm going to create just this table right here. And the table is, rows are obviously, horizontal, and columns are vertical. So if we looked at this table here, we really only have 2 rows. And so I'm going to bring this down to 2 rows, and we have 5 columns. We've established the 5 columns because we have 5 different desserts that we need to put in here. So with that, body rows and columns, I will click OK. And the way it comes out, see, because InDesign doesn't know how deep these columns are or how you want to break up the spacing in these columns, it gives it to you evenly at the top. And so here's where you want to kind of know how to move these lines around. And you know what I'm going to do? Rather than just two rows and 5 columns, I'm going to make it a little more interesting here, and I'm going to insert a table that has more rows. So instead of 2 rows, I'll make it 4 rows and 6 columns, okay, just so that we have more to work with. Okay, so here's the first thing, and working with tables is something that you just have to do and play around with, you know, because it's really hard to forget and the shortcut keys that you need to push. But I'll tell you right now, it's really only one shortcut key, and it's the Shift key. Okay, so first of all, I'm not going to press any modifier key. I'm just going to go up to the bottom line here, and when you hover over the bottom line, you see it, there's an up and down arrow. And when I hover over all of these horizontal lines, you get up and down arrows, except for when I hover over the top, all I get is a down arrow, because you can only move the table down. You can't move it up. Now, if I hover over the bottom and I click and pull, okay, only the bottom line moves. I'm going to Command Z that back. If I hold the Shift key down and hover over the bottom line, then every line above it moves equally. So I can make this table any depth I want, and I could rest assured that all of the cells are the exact same size, horizontally or vertically. Okay, so there's my table. But a lot of tables aren't evenly distributed. You know, the cells are different depths. So if you want to move any line, any single line, independently of anything else, okay, if you hold that Shift key down, you can move that line independently. So now I can make this cell kind of less deep than these cells. If I hold the Shift key down, I can pull this down, and now I have a table that looks like this. So the Shift key allows you to independently move lines, whereas if I just didn't hold anything down, and let's say if I move this line, every line above it is going to move in proportion. So if I click on this line right now and I move it down, you can see, oh, I'm sorry, every line below it. Okay, if I move this up, the lines below it move. Again, if I move this line up, the lines below it move up in proportion. They stay in proportion. So this is where it gets a little kind of, you know, not confusing, but it's just something that you want to mess with, you know, and get the feel of. So again, if I hold the Shift key down, I can move a line independently. If I don't hold the Shift key down, whenever I hover over a line, the bottom lines below it move either up or down. And that's really all you have to know in order to get a, you know, make a table any size you want. Once you have that table, you can always modify the table by going up to Table Options and Table Setup. I pull this off to the side. And here's where we can add more rows. We can take out rows, take out columns, add more columns. So if I wanted 7 columns, you can see where a column was just added to that. Okay, now it adds the column whatever width these columns are. So if I add an 8th column, it's going to go off the page again, but the same size. Okay. So now if I wanted to resize this table, I'm sorry, I'm going to click OK. Now if I grab this corner here, this edge, okay, and I hold the Shift key down, I'm sorry, then every line to the left of it will move in proportion. And now I've squeezed 8 columns in the same width as the original 5 columns. Okay, so you see how that works? What you're doing is you're eliminating or adding columns. So let's say I have 8 columns now, and I want to go up and make it 4 columns. I'll go to Table, Insert Table, or Table Options, Table Setup. And instead of the 8 columns, I'll go 7. It says you were about to delete columns from your table. Yes. Okay. 6, 5, 4 columns. I'll click OK. And then by holding the Shift key down, grabbing this corner, I can now stretch these 4 columns out. And now I have 4 columns the same width. Now if you had photos in here, they would automatically be stretched out. But the photo wouldn't stretch. You know how when we stretch a photo, we don't want to do that. We never want to stretch a photo. We want to enlarge a photo to fill that space, because otherwise it'll start distorting. But as we move this line out here, what will happen is that those photos will enlarge themselves to fill that space. So it's really nice to do, to be able to do that. If there's type in here, the type will automatically break to the width of that, cell, just like a type box. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so we know how to create a table, and we know how to kind of modify the spaces between the table. Now the horizontal lines or the vertical lines act the same. If I just hover over a vertical line, I can see it go left and right, and everything to the left of this is going to move, or I'm sorry, to the right of it's going to move. So if I move this, everything to the right is going to move, but everything to the left will not move. And then if I hold the Shift key down, only that line moves. Okay, so I can have a very specific table. I'll undo that. Okay. Okay. Now, the first thing about a table is that everything is linked together. So this all acts as one text box. So if I type something in here, just some text, and I go over to the end of this cell, it automatically breaks it to the next line. Okay. So it's almost as if this is an individual text box. I'll highlight that and delete it. Now, another thing to remember is that you can highlight text in a cell, or you can highlight the entire cell. So if you noticed, when I had all that text in here, right now just the text is highlighted. But if I kind of keep going, it's easy to see the whole box highlights. So if I did that and I deleted the text, if this box was filled with a color, the color would also delete. So you have to kind of be careful what you're highlighting. Are you highlighting the box, or are you highlighting the text? Best way to highlight text inside of a cell is just kind of, triple click on it, so that you don't highlight the whole box. But anyway, there's 2 parameters here, the text and the entire box. To go to the next cell, though, is very simple. Okay, so if I type in, let's say, the number 1 here in the corner, let me delete that. Type in the number 1. Let me just make that 1 bigger. See how it's hard to highlight just the 1? Let me just make that bigger. I'll make it like 20 points. And then if I wanted to go to the next cell, I just hit the Tab key, and I can make it 2, 3, or 3 and 4, so whatever. So as I go back, oops, don't want to do that. I can delete I think it's Shift Tab that deletes that. Yeah, Shift Tab goes to the next cell. Okay, so tabbing over, typing in a box, hitting Tab goes to the next cell, hitting Tab goes to the next cell, and so forth. And that's how you jump from cell to cell. So if you were to do a calendar, you would create a table. I mean, that would be the easiest way to design a calendar, is to create a table. And I'll show you a calendar in a sec. For instance, I'm going to jump to this. And here's a calendar. And basically, this is an entire table. If I turn on the guides here, you can see that this is a table, this whole text box here. And everything moves as a table. So the headers up here are a table. All the text inside is a table. Okay, so we know how text behaves. We just simply get the text tool and we start typing into it. And here's some nuance now. If you look at this example, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Oops. Let me zoom in. We can see that this text is in this table, but we have some insets here. In other words, the text, when I started typing, happened to start typing right here. Normally, with the default, your text is going to start very close to the corner of your cell. Okay, it's not going to start right on the edge line, but it's going to start very close to that. And in design, we might not want that to happen. We might want to establish some insets where the text starts. So that's what this is about. So here's my cell. And I'll start typing in here. I'll get the text tool. And you notice that when I click, the cursor is right up against the, it's pretty close to the left edge, but it's right on the top. So when I start typing, that's where the text comes out. And I might not want the text to come out right there. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that. And with the cursor inside of the cell, I'm going to go up to table. And now we have individual options that we can set text in a cell. So we have table options and we have individual cell options. So we can literally have different typographic parameters in each cell, which is, you could have character styles in a certain cell that are different than the character styles or paragraph styles of this cell. But rather than get into that, let's just keep it simple for now. I'm going to go into Cell Options Text. And this is pretty simple. We will go to the text cell options, and right at the top here we see Insets. And always click your preview, because by default the preview is not selected, and so whatever you do here you won't see reacting here. So if you do preview, you'll see that. Okay, the top inset is the distance from the top of this cell to where the text is going to start. The bottom is where the text is going to end. Left and right sides are self-explanatory. So I'm going to make all of these cell insets the same. And when I click the top, okay, and as I start clicking higher values here, you can see how this cursor starts dropping from the top. If I want it to affect all of these parameters, I'll just enable the chain link. So whatever I do to any one of these windows will be reflected in all of the windows, So I'll do this. Okay, and you can see that as I increase the top, the left side changes as well. So now when I start typing in this box, you can see how the text is breaking off to the left side inset, right side inset, and the top inset. So now the text is sitting in this cell exactly the way I want it to look. Okay, so let's say now I want the text to be centered in this cell. I can also create alignments. So by clicking in this cell, if I go up again to Table, Cell Options, Text, you also see that I have justification. Right now the text is aligning to the top, but if I now say align it to center, my text is perfectly centered in this cell. Or I could align it to the bottom. I could align it to the, justify it vertically or whatever. So these cell options, okay, under Table, Cell Options, is how you change the setting of where this text sits in this. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go over to this page here, and I'm going to show you that if I highlighted, if I selected, all I have to do is just click in this cell, in this whole cell, just click. And if I go up to Table, and I go up to Cell Options, Text, you can see that my inset is 0.1875. And that allows this text to look like this. Okay, so that's how you can adjust the text inside of a cell in terms of where you want it to be. Okay, the next thing is putting in a photograph inside of a cell. And I'm going to put a photo in this cell right here. Okay. Now, first of all, let me just mention that I had established cell insets for just this cell by itself. So that means this cell does not have those cell insets. This cell has the regular default inset. And you can see when I click in all of these other boxes, my cursor is very close to the edge. Okay, so in order to set the cell insets for every box, you would have to highlight all of the boxes that you want that to happen in. So if I wanted those cell insets to occur in all of these boxes, I would have to highlight all of these boxes and then go up to Table, Cell Insets, Text, and then make those parameters for all of these boxes. Okay, so that's the way you would do it. You would do it for every box rather than one at a time. Okay, but let's say I wanted to put a photograph in here. Now, to place a photograph on a page, we know in InDesign it's File, Place. Okay, we can go up to File and Place, or Command D is the shortcut key. So I'll go up to File and Place with my cursor inserted in this box. I'll go up to File and Place, and I'll look for a photo, and I'll just go to where those photos are, which is in my links folder here. Let me get this photo out here, the cake photo. Okay, and I'll click Open. And what it did was it inserted that photo into this box. So that's as easy as it gets. You just click in the box that you want to place the photo. I'll click in this box next, and I'll go File, Place, or Command D. I'll look for another photo, this ice cream. I'll click Open, and it inserts that photo into this cell. Now, this cell, if you notice, is this size. It's whatever size we made it. But this photo, we might have more photo than what we're seeing here. What InDesign did was it cropped it based on the center of that photo. So it took the center of the photo and it brought it out and it cropped it from top to bottom. So if I hold my mouse over this center circle and click and hold, you can see, and it always sizes it from top to bottom. So if I hold my hand over the center here, you can see that I've got a lot more photo on the left and the right. So if I wanted to kind of recrop this over and use, let's say, a lot of the green ice cream, I could do that, and it automatically crops it to that cell. Same with the cake. If I wanted to see more of the front of the cake, okay, if I click and hold, I can move this over, and I can crop this differently in here. So cropping a photo, placing a photo inside of a cell is just like placing a photo on the page. It's Command D or File Place, and then just have your cursor inserted in that cell. So watch what happens when I click inside of this skinny cell right here, this one, and I place a photo. I'm going to go Command D, and I don't know, I'll just grab whatever, the pie photo. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the top of the pie and the bottom of this photo from top to bottom and squeeze it into that cell. Okay, so there it is. So if I click and hold, I can see that I have a little bit more kind of top to bottom on this. Let me zoom into this for a sec. See, I have a little bit more top to bottom, so I can drop it down a little bit and crop it that way. Need to crop it over a little bit. Yeah. So in this case, what InDesign did is it cropped it from side to side. That became the critical length. And now I have parameters to go. Okay, now let's say I wanted to really highlight the cherries in this photo. Let's say this, the way it cropped this was, okay, but I want to enlarge it now. So now I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, select this. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's this brown line right here, brown bounding box around this. And this is going to allow me to enlarge now. So I'm going to hold the Command and Shift key down. I'm going to grab the corner of this pie photo. And I'm going to click, hold, and I'm going to start enlarging this pie photo. I'm going to let go. And then with my regular selection tool, when I click and hold on this, you can see how big the photo is. And now I can remove this photo, say in the center of this, and InDesign will automatically crop it to that cell. You can see here the outside. This is the actual size of the photo. And all I'm doing is kind of moving it inside of this cell. So you can not only place the photo inside of a cell, but you can also manipulate that photo and make it larger, and blow it up inside of that cell. Okay, so that's how photos behave inside of a cell. And so now, if we went back to this, you pretty much have everything you need to know on how to put this table together. It's a table of 2 rows, 5 columns, photos in each of these cells, and just kind of estimate the size of this. I'm not giving you any hard and fast measurements, but maybe I will. It looks like if I measure this cell here, it looks like the measurement is about almost 4 inches deep. Okay, so the cell is about 4 inches deep. The table is about 4 inches deep, and this is 1/2 inch margins here on an 8.5 by 11 page. So 8.5 by 11 letter size page, 1/2 inch margins, 4 inches deep, and these are like squares, and then whatever comes down here. This text here is just kind of placeholder text. So the only thing you're doing here is setting the word ice cream, cakes, and then just filling this with placeholder text. Notice how the placeholder text is the same for every single cell, so you're not having to write anything. You can just slap in placeholder text in here in each one. Just copy and paste it in, and just change out. You can copy and paste everything, and then just change out the headings. This text up here, dessert, is a typeface called Chunk 5 extra bold, and that font is given to you under the assignments here. Let me click on the assignments. Dessert page exercise. So here's the write-up of that exercise. I'm giving you kind of the specs here. And then here's the link for all the photos you can download, and then here is that type font that you can use. Now if you don't have that type font, do you have a Mac or a PC?
PC.
You have a PC? Okay. Just use a, I don't know, you could probably get this in a PC. It's a true type font, so it should install. It's a cool font. It's a slab serif font. I really like this font. I got it from DeFont. Okay, so anyway, that is Chunk 5, and not giving you any of the typeface sizes or anything, but I'll tell you right now, it's 99 point. It's in white also. And this text right here is just any generic serif font. You can use Times Roman. This is Minion Pro. It's about 10 point type. And this is kind of bold here, you know. Also, you know, and you don't have to use the exact same, you know, colors that I used, but what I have here is this is kind of a yellow color. I think I sampled it from this photo here. And then this is just white. Then the table, and you can see the table typography is Chunk 5, and then this is actually a sans serif font that's condensed. I used Myriad condensed. So if you look at the example of, if I click in here, oh, my text is always, oh, you know why? There's a text box there. I need to lock that layer. Okay. So I use Myriad Pro Condensed 8 point. 8 point. And the cell options I think I mentioned were table, cell options, text was 0.1875 all around, top, bottom, left, and right. And that'll get you that text to sit exactly like that. Okay, so that's the table. Now when you first open up this page, you're going to open it up as a 3-column grid, you know, a 3-column page. So the if we were to open up this from scratch, it would be a new document, simply letter size 8.5 by 11, number of pages 1, columns 3, leave the gutter space to the default, and then click create. Okay, with 1/2-inch margin, default margins, and that's what you would get. So this is the way you're going to start. This is the base page that you're going to work from. You're going to create a black background, put it on a different layer. I would create a second layer, and then lock it after you color it black, and then just build everything on top of that. Oops. Okay, then you get to this part of it, and all of this is just text in 3 columns, and it's just placeholder text. So if you went to that, all you would do is just set a text box and just set placeholder text in the whole thing. And then you can go in and just click here, click the overset icon, click there, and just kind of work that text around to 3 columns. Okay, and then click this and do the same thing. And that's how you would set that up. Don't worry about the overset text icon here, but you normally would. You really want to pay attention to that if this were real copy. But you can just kind of set that up like that. Make sure that they're all even across. And then what you're going to do is, you're familiar with the text wraps, how to do a text wrap?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll just bring in that photo and insert it in here and create a text wrap around it, which is the, if I go to that photo, I believe it was that one there. I already did the kind of rough vignette around there. So you'll open that up, you'll spit that out, resize it down, and place it in there. But you'll select it and go up here to text wrap and give it a text wrap. And then adjust the points all around so that this wraps around. Okay, so that's easy enough to create. And that will be this. Okay, now the drop caps are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Doing that? Okay, so that's just chunk 5, 3 lines deep, 1 character. And that'll get you that drop cap. This text here, I believe, is 10/12, Minion Pro, or you can use Times Roman or whatever you want. The idea is that this is sans serif here, and this is serif. Okay, then you have the sidebar. And the sidebar is just a text box. So let me go over that real quick. That is going to be simply a text box. Okay, so you draw a text box. And because I'm on a lock layer, it's going to go on. Okay, it doesn't matter. You draw a text box. And if you notice, that text box is actually 2 columns wide on the 3-column grid. See how it ends up right on the 2nd column of this 3-column grid. And you're going to then go to this feature right here, which is Object Text Frame Options. So this is different than a than a table. It's just basically a text box that you're going to break into columns. So you see you have 3 columns up here, but let's say I wanted to break this up into 4 columns, but still line up with the 3rd column of this. Once you hit text frame options, object text frame options, you get this dialog box. And then all you're going to do is just add 4 columns, 3, 4. Okay, and you can see how this text box was now broken up into 4 columns. So it's almost like, you know, just opening up a page and it's columns within columns. We have an overall 3-column grid working inside of a 4-column grid inside of a 3-column grid. Click OK. And then you're going to fill this with placeholder text. And I'll go to text and I'll insert there. And when I go to fill with placeholder text, you can see that it fills it through 4 columns. And that's how that was done here. And this, I believe, was, oops. Again, it was that Myriad Pro condensed. This is 8/9 points. You're going to place this photo inside of this sidebar. You're going to color the sidebar, you know, a color. I use this kind of cream color. So it's just a text box that's filled with color. select this, do a text wrap around this. So if I go on my direct selection tool and I click in here, you can see the actual points that were used to wrap this around. And that's how that box is done. And then at the very bottom corner here, you have this photo. That's just simply a photo that's been placed and spun around. And then this was selected as a text wrap so that this text right here will repel that. So you can see as I move this text in, it constantly repels this because this box has this photo has a text wrap applied to it. Undo that. This text is italic. And if you're using Times, just use a Times italic. It looks like it's about 7-point text, so it's smaller. And it wraps around this photo. And that's pretty much it. There's several things going on with this, but it's kind of a typographic solution to, a design that's utilizing tables to organize information. And these are the tools of typography that you have in your tool chest of your arsenal of design to use to make a simple page like this with lots of information organized, look fairly well, read fairly well, and so forth. So if you didn't utilize tables, if you didn't utilize grids and, not necessarily text wraps, but, you'd have lots of text boxes on the page. And when we break this thing down, it's really simple. I mean, that's one text box, two. The entire table is a unit. These are individual. But, this can be done just like this, right? I mean, if you wanted to, you could just draw one big text box here, divide it up into 3 columns. And this would all be one unit. But this is all one unit outside of this. And so we don't really have a whole lot of pieces to this when you look at it. Pull this out. Right? That's it. And that's kind of the way that you want to look at designing pages, is with as many integrated things that, and character styles and paragraph styles and all of that. But anyway, give this a shot. Okay. Putting this together. I'm sure it's not going to be that difficult to do, but the most important part is just for it to sink into your head that this is an option that you could use for other things. And next major assignment is going to be to put up a magazine article, to do a magazine article. And there's a lot of things in here in this assignment that you can utilize. And what I think I'll also do in that assignment is introduce you to some of the animation techniques of InDesign. So now, instead of just a static page like this, we can do something like this. We can highlight this text here, and I'm going to go up here to Essentials, go up to Digital Publishing. This changes here, and I'm going to click on Animation. And with this dessert selected, I might choose to have that fly in from the left. So it's going to start over here and come in this way. And when I preview this in the EPUB preview, it's going to look like this. And let's say this comes in first, and let's say this entire table fades in. I'll select the whole table. Oops. And I will choose that to, let's say, fade in. And let's say it fades in over 3 seconds. Then I'll preview that. Dessert slides in and the table comes in. So now we could have a lot of fun with things, typography, imagery, animating on the page. And if this was an electronic magazine, an e-publication, your audience could have some interactivity going, some animation going. You know, imagine if this was a children's book and you did a e-publication for a children's book where bunny rabbits came in and, you know, birds flew away, things like that. You could do some really interesting things. So we'll talk about that in the next in the next class. But give this dessert page a shot. And that is all. That's all I got.
Okay.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen here. Okay, so I will see you on Monday, huh?
Yep.
Monday of next week for the branding class.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, okay, take care.
Monday. You too.